Chapter 6. Verses 1-5. Paul knew that even in the best Christian society, people slip up. The danger all those who are trying to live the Christian life is that they are prone to judge the sins of others harshly. Paul says that when not if a person does slip, the real Christian duty is to get them on their feet again. The word overtaken in verse 1 literally means caught, which may imply the person was actually seen committing the sin, or that he was caught up or snared by the sin itself. Those who are spiritual are those believers who are walking in the Spirit, who are filled with the Spirit, and evidencing the fruit of the Spirit. Paul says that these people are to restore this person. The word he uses to correct lays the stress not on punishment, but on the cure. It means to mend or repair and was used of setting a broken bone or repairing a dislocated limb. Heb 12:13. The process of restoration is outlined in Matthew chapter 18. We are to do this in the spirit of meekness. We are to compare our achievements not with the work of our neighbors, but with what our best would have been. When we do that, there can never be any cause for conceit. Choice. In this passage, Paul speaks of bearing burdens. Burdens are extra heavy loads, which here represent difficulties or problems people have trouble dealing with. To bear it denotes carrying it with endurance. There is a kind of burden which comes to a person from the chances and changes of life, and it is fulfilling the law of Christ to help everyone who has such a burden to carry. The law of Christ is the law of love that fulfills the entire law. But there is also a burden which we must carry ourselves. The word Paul uses is the word used for a soldier's pack. There is a duty which no one can do for us in a task for which we must be personally responsible. Believers must first be sure their lives are right with God before giving spiritual help to others. If a believer rejoices or boasts, he should only be boasting in the Lord for what God has done in him, not for what he has accomplished compared to other believers. Verse 5 is not a contradiction to verse 2. The burden refers to life's routine obligations and to each believer's calling. God requires faithfulness and meeting those responsibilities. Verses 6-10, Paul states a grim truth. He insists that life holds the scales with an even balance. If a person allows the lower side of their nature to dominate them, in the end they can expect nothing but trouble. But if they keep on walking the way of God and doing the right thing, in the end they will reap blessing. All good things in verse 6 could refer to material compensation, but the text suggests that Paul is referring to the spiritually and morally excellent things learned from the Word. Paul uses the same term to describe the gospel in Romans chapter 10. Paul ends this passage by reminding them that sometimes the work of sharing and generosity may be rough, but no one who ever cast their bread on the waters found that it did not return to them one day. Verse 10 is a daily instruction for us. The Greek word for opportunity refers to a distinct, fixed time, rather than occasional moments. Paul's point is that the believer's entire life provides the unique privilege by which he can serve others in the name of Christ. Our love for fellow Christians is the primary test of our love for God. John 13:34-35, Rom 12:10-13. Verses 11-18. This closing section of the letter is Paul's final rhetorical attack against the Judaizers' doctrine and motives. It is also a positive statement of his own godly motives in preaching the true gospel. Paul wrote with large letters. This can be interpreted in two ways. His poor eyesight forced him to use large letters, or instead of the normal cursive style of writing used by professional scribes, he used the large block letters to emphasize the letter's content rather than its form. It was a visible picture that contrasted his concern with the content of the gospel for the Judaizers' only concern, which was appearances. As a good translation of the Greek verb, this indicates that Paul wrote the entire letter with his own hand, not just writing something brief at the end as he had done before. 1 Cor 16:21, Col 4:18, 2 Thess 3:17. Paul wrote this letter himself to make sure the Galatians know he was writing it, and to personalize the document, given the importance and severity of its contents. Out of his love for them, Paul concludes with the center of the matter. Those who wanted the Galatians to get themselves circumcised did so for three reasons. 1. It would save them from persecution. The Romans recognized the Jewish religion and officially allowed the Jews to practice it. Circumcision was the mark of a Jew, and these people saw it as a mark of safety if persecution should come. The Judaizers were more concerned about their personal safety than correct doctrine. They hoped to avoid social and financial ostracism from other Jews and maintain their protected status as Jews within the Roman Empire. 2. By circumcision, and by keeping the rules and regulations of the law, they were trying to put on a show that would win the approval of God. Paul was certain that nothing man could do would win that approval, and he points them again to the cross. 3. The ones who wanted the Galatians to be circumcised did not themselves keep the law. No one could, but they wanted to boast about the Galatians as their latest prize. Paul again points out that all that matters is the act of faith in Christ, which opens the door to a new life. The Greek word for boast in verse 14 is a basic expression of praise, unlike the English word which includes the aspect of pride. Paul glories and rejoices in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, Rom 8, 1-13. After the intensity of the letter comes the peace and benediction. The results of salvation are peace and mercy. Peace is the believer's new relationship to God, and mercy is the forgiveness of sins and the setting aside of God's judgment. PSA 25:6, Dan 9:18, Matt 5:7, Luke 1:50, Rom 12:1.